Welcome to the Resilience Sucks podcast, brought to you by the Adaptability Movement. I'm Ben.
And I'm Dan.
And we're here to give you resources and tools to help you go from a state of surviving to thriving in life.
Resilience sucks the life out of you. And while it's a necessary skill, it's one that we don't want to spend too much time in or we run out of capacity. We're here to talk to you more about how to adapt and find the opportunity in change so you can really go about thriving in your own life.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Pool Compliance Adelaide. Pool Compliance Adelaide has a simple mission: to provide professional advice and photographic proof that your pool complies with the relevant state statutory requirements. If you're buying, renting, or even selling a property, make sure your pool is compliant with Pool Compliance Adelaide.
Welcome to another episode of our Reflections episode, I guess you'd call it. We're now 4 episodes deep. We've done an intro. We've had 2 podcasts with a guest in each. And as co-founders, Ben and I wanted to have an opportunity to every now and then do a podcast which is more about reflecting on other people we interviewed, things that we've learned ourselves, and how we're applying adaptability in our own lives. And so that's really the purpose of what we're here to talk to you about today. Is we're obviously growing businesses, we've got families, Ben's still involved in sport and so am I. I'm just taking a bit of a hiatus at the moment. And so it's just about kind of how all those things add up so that we can hopefully impart and share some wisdom from our lives that people can take away and use in their own. So Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
I just think that it's we often can go through, whether it's listening to resources such as podcasts or reading books or watching videos, and we don't actually stop and reflect and look at the takeaways that we have from it. We kind of just watch it and go, oh, there's some cool things, and then you kind of just move on and you forget about it. But I guess what we want to do is actually stimulate some thinking around some ideas that you can implement straight away, or at least have some steps to implement. So we often talk about with anything that we do, not necessarily what's the end goal. Yes, that's important, but it's like what's the next step, or what's the first step that you need to take. So often people can get stuck up on maybe steps 3, 4, and 5 when they forget about steps 1 and 2, which is if you don't start, then you can't expect to get to that goal. So how can we make it as simple for people as possible to really take what they've learned and implement it? And then how can we make sure that it's not just something that gives you a bit of inspiration once and then it's gone? It's like, how can we, again, we talk about reflecting in terms of how can we constantly reflect on our lives, whether that's daily by doing things such as journaling, or whether it's having, quarterly, half yearly points, whether it's in your career or when you're in your personal life or whatever it is, and really making sure that we reflect on what's happened, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, how can we do it better so that we can sort of live a life that has more purpose and meaning and not just sort of float through.
Sure. And so if I'm to summarise that a little bit, we're talking about reflection being the act of stopping, of being present in that moment and sort of taking stock of where you are. What you've recently kind of downloaded or learnt or whatever you want to call it in terms of that uptake of information, and then trying to use that in a way which is practical. So to take that message of adaptability, we want to go, okay, where are we now? Like, what do we have available to us? What do we still need to learn? And what do we need to do to move towards the direction that we want to head in, rather than away from something that we're less satisfied with or fearful of. So for me, that's you mentioned about the first few steps, and we've had an experience in our business of being great planners, and often picking up on trends or maybe even starting a trend initially, but not over planning it in the initial stages and thinking we need to get this perfect system in place before we could roll it out. What we've learned from that is that things change. Yeah. So from your original concept of what it might look like, that's probably going to change within the first 2 steps. Yeah. So if you're going to plan through to steps 12, well, you might have actually wasted a lot of energy on what it's taken to build that system out to 12 steps without understanding that overall picture should just be a vision,
Yeah.
and it should be fluid in nature, so that when we get through those first 2 steps, we can again reflect, take stock, and then work out where we need to tweak things and mobilise things based on the new information that's been presented since.
Yeah, and I think that the point of this podcast as well is it's a chance for us to reflect as well. Like, yes, we're reflecting on what we've learned from the guests and whatnot, but it's also a chance for us, you and me, to talk about things that we've learned over the last sort of few weeks, months, whatever it's been, in our own personal lives, in our business life, and making sure that we take that time to have an understanding of what's working, what's not working, because as you said, like you need to make sure that you're not over planning, because if you're going, because the amount of times that we've planned out this perfect thing, this perfect program, this perfect whatever, and then we get 2 steps in and it's like, well, actually this is going to be completely different to what we thought, and we've just spent 10 hours, writing all this stuff up. It's like, well, we often we suffer from the perfectionist mindset of like, we need to have it perfect before we go out there and start putting it out to the public, or even recently we've kind of been trying to develop our website a bit more, and it's kind of like, well, I guess, like working in previous places before, like especially in software and stuff, they talk about like, what's the MVP, the minimum viable product that you can get out, put something out there so that it might be 80% of what you want it to be, but then that last 20% is just refining it along the way. Because if you put out something that you think is 100%, you're going to take so much more time, and then you're going to work out that you've got to refine it anyway. So you're never going to put out something that's going to be 100% perfect and that you're never going to have to adjust.
Yeah.
Whether it be a program, whether it be a website, whether that be a new business in general, or whatever it is, a piece of work, it's always going to be never complete. There's always something more you can do. And so you got to get out of that mindset of, all right, I got to have this perfect before it goes out there. It's just get stuff out there.
Yeah.
That's what we've learned. Get stuff out there. Get it happening, get it moving, because then that creates momentum, and momentum's like a massive thing in business, in life, in everything. Because if we speak about making sure that once we've got the cart going, like it can start pushing itself eventually, rather than us having to constantly push it all the time.
Yeah. The great learning for this for me is absolutely that. Like we've gone through that cycle of over planning, and really it's about, if we get a couple of steps in, if we take those first few steps, build some momentum, get some feedback, then we can actually come back, reevaluate, like tweak some things, and then push on again with much more purposeful direction, as well as sort of making sure you're satisfying the things that you want to satisfy and the people that are engaging with that. So look, it's definitely been good. We've caught ourselves more in the moment when we started to get caught up in that, because it's easy to do both from a perfectionist mindset, but also from this sort of sense of, I've used the word hopium before with you, and to me, hopium is that idea that it feels really good to sort of dream something up, to create and to innovate and to explore that in this visualization world, because in that world it can be perfect, right? And so you're like, yeah, we've got this great idea, we're going to do this, like it's amazing, but you haven't tested it, you haven't trialed it, like, and until you take those first 2 steps, like you're not actually going to work out if it's going to play out the way you expect it to. So letting go of that a lot has definitely been helpful for us, and just like coming back to that sense of alignment, like what do we feel we need, like to satisfy us as well. So like, if we were to come in as a customer or one of those other stakeholders or people that are interacting with what we're offering, what would we expect to see? What would we want to experience? And the experience is the big one for me, because I think experience is what makes something worthwhile. You can go and see the most educated or most prestigious person in the world on a particular topic, but if there's no charisma, there's no connection, there's no experience, it's going to be like sitting in there, like lecture theatre, like scribbling notes to someone that you never actually have a personal relationship with on a topic which you thought you're interested in, but without context or connection, it just lacks. It feels dull.
Yeah, well, we've all done stuff before where whether it's like, done sort of program or been involved with some sort of business, that the product might not be as good as what other people are offering, but they offer that amazing experience in terms of like it might be like, and fitness do this a lot, like yes, and we got caught up in it a fair bit, is like we need to write the perfect program of the perfect thing. It's like have it like everything that's scientific.
Everything's got to be gold standard.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Which is great whether if you're working with probably like elite level athletes, but then the average day to day like young athlete or whatever, like they just want something where they can come in and they're going to get better anyway. They're going to learn and improve from whatever you give them. But it needs to be an experience that they want to keep coming back to and enjoying and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's what we've learned a fair bit from. And I think it's something that the more we do things, the more we understand that it's not necessarily like about how amazing your product is if you can't have people keep coming to
that's not the key
it.
determinant. Like
No.
it's important to have a good product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
we definitely not neglecting a great service, but it's like, how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
How does that experience make you feel? And it's we all know, like if you're in a stimulating environment where you feel connected, you feel valued, you feel like you belong, you want to be there. Like you want to invest more, you give more freely. It doesn't feel like a chore. It doesn't feel hard.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about this feeling of connection, of ease about what you're doing. And so, it's about how can you take that to different areas of your life? How can you take that to your relationship, to your workplace or your career, to your sports stuff, and even to your own sort of internal mindset, in a way that, creates more alignment for you. And therefore, like when you're in alignment, you're in flow.
Yeah.
And when you're in flow, you would generally achieve more with less effort.
Yeah. And I think that to progress now to talking more about the guests that we've had. So obviously Bevan Jones and Clifford Minor have been our two guests so far, and two great podcasts, but two very different podcasts in a way. And I think with Bevo, like what we were talking about before about just getting started and the end product being completely different from where you start. So he spoke about how he wanted to be a radio announcer and stuff, and lost his job, his dream job as he called it, in the Riverland, and then was like, what can I do? And then someone suggested to him to just start like a footy tipping video segment, which he started, and now it's turned into like 4 years later, it's now turned into something where he's interviewing like these big name people, like who had, as we spoke about before, those amazing experiences, and now he's having these amazing experiences with these people, which started as a footy tipping thing, and it progressed from all the way along there. So he probably never imagined at the first place when he first started a footy tipping thing that he was going to interview George Columbaris. Like, why would I be doing that? Yeah. But yeah, he's had these amazing guests, and it's just evolved over the years to where it is now. And that was a big thing that I took away from his podcast. I don't know.
Look, I just thought his story is a great one in terms of like, it's not about perfectionism or already sort of feeling like you're at this lofty level of success, like whatever success means to you. It's about going, well, there's a great story here about resilience and adaptability. He was able to sort of get through a tough period. He was able to kind of take stock, to reflect and acknowledge where he's at, and then go, what's available to me? And he sought out mentors and he trusted their advice, and that put him on a path to like you said, 4 years of cumulative kind of experience in creating something which is now welcoming in a broader audience, more recognised names for that audience. Whether in terms of like learning and stuff, like it's not about status per se, but if someone has got a lot of wisdom or a lot of experience in an area, and you're familiar with that, well, that can make it easier to learn from that as well.
Yeah, and I think like we always speak about opportunities and creating more opportunities from whatever situation you're in, and that's what he's done. He mentioned that, like, I was like, how do you get all these guests? Like he's like I'm just I think he said something around like, I'm just a nobody from wherever that, and now he's got all these massive names on his podcasts, and he just said he just contacts them and is like at the start, he was really nervous about it, but now he just sort of puts it out there, and people say yes. Like it's amazing what happens and what doors you can open by just doing something. The amount of people in life that don't do something out of fear of, oh no, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? Or I want to
mental energy that they spend on that thought process as well, rather than just acting and dealing with any discomfort about rejection.
Yeah,
it's that fear of rejection.
Yeah, 100%.
It delays us and it suppresses our progress.
Yeah, and like we suffer from that as well, from like many times throughout our span of business, and it's just a thing. Like if you think back at the end of your life and go, oh, like you're probably going to regret things that you didn't do rather than things that you did do, aren't you? Like it's going to be like, oh, I wish I did this, I wish I did this. Like not oh no, I was. In his case, it's like, oh, damn it, I wish I didn't message George Gombaris because he said no. Like, he's going to be like, well, how good is it that I did because he said yes, and now he's on my podcast. So, I think that's another big takeaway that I took from his podcast is just, like, open your own doors. Don't wait for doors to open. Like, actually, like, make things happen.
But also, just be a great responder. Like, and I think this is definitely something that I've learnt with the both of us is, yes, like create, innovate, like, grow something and sort of lead something. But at the same time, like, how quickly can you respond to a situation? How quickly can you respond to feedback? How quickly can you respond to a challenge that's thrown your way? Because ultimately that's going to determine your progress.
Yeah.
Not just being a bull at a gate and sort of climbing over the top of people to get what you want, because it doesn't win too many fans doing that. No. You might achieve monetary success or status success, but what's the cost? Whereas if you can do that sort of stuff in a way which is in alignment for you, and you set clear intentions about it, but not too high expectations on how you get there, then the rest of it becomes, well, as new information comes in or as something changes, then I can adapt.
Yeah.
And that to me was sort of what I picked up from Bevo, was that there was a lot of relatability there in terms of his experience of school and feeling bullied or isolated and those sort of things. And for me, that hit home. That was an experience that I could relate to. And but for him, it was always about what's next. How do I grow myself? How do I and just again, none of it's about perfection. Like we're both openly here saying that we're here to grow. Like we don't feel like we've achieved all we want to achieve, or that we'll ever reach a point that feels like that.
No.
Just that we have this intention to continue expanding our view of things and our understanding of stuff.
Yeah. So I think, like, as I said, like the biggest takeaway action points for me from that one was just to actually just do and don't let fear stand in your way in terms of what you want, and like we've been particularly over the last few weeks, we've been speaking a lot about like visualization and manifesting things and how powerful language is.
Yeah.
And that actually creating stuff for yourself and not waiting for things to happen. So going out there and if you like, for us, like we're trying to contact more organizations, more schools to work in. Like, don't just wait for people to come to us. Like, let's go out there and actually like proactively seek out. It's like, oh, okay, I know this person. Like, let me go talk to them. They might open up another door for someone else. And again, it's not necessarily the person that you're going to talk to is going to be able to go, oh yes, come in and do whatever. It's like, well, it might open up a door, or they might know someone else, or later, in a few months' time, they might go, oh, we need something more around adaptability and all this sort of stuff, and they go, oh, I remember these guys have a program that they spoke to me about. So it's not about that instantaneous success or making things happen straight away. It's like, well, how can you put the foundations in place to then reap the rewards at a later time as well? Yeah,
so it's planting seeds, right? Yeah. Planting seeds of intention, and then being a great responder when those situations and opportunities come up.
Yeah.
Adapting.
Yeah, exactly.
So then the other podcast we had was Cliff Miner.
Yeah.
So Cliff's a sports person, so has played at a high level in soccer or football, if we want to call it that. There's a lot of Australian viewers here, which would prefer to use one term than the other, but and is also doing his doctorate in psychology. So really, really fascinating conversation there, just in terms of perspectives, particularly because Clifford grew up in Kenya as well. And so, culturally, there's a different approach to the way you do things, and very, very direct and very, it gets to the point on a lot of issues. Like, is very very able to be introspective and to consider a situation, but is very clear about needs, intentions, expectations, that sort of stuff as well.
It's not being blunt, but it's just not having all that fluffiness around everything. And it's just like, all right, this is what you've told me, this is what I'm hearing, like, what can we do about it? Rather than
being really clear.
Yeah, rather than just, as you said, like fluffing about or just throwing in a bunch of other stuff. So
almost the opposite to an Australian culture,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So
and it's we have this tendency to sort of soften the blow, like in terms of when we talk to someone. So, and it's interesting because we do that in a way that we say it's for the other person's benefit, like, oh, we didn't want to come across too harsh or too blunt or whatever. But really, it's actually about our own discomfort. We didn't want to feel like we were a bad person because we said something in a way which hurt someone else's feelings.
Yeah.
And the intention is, if you go in with the correct intention, then that shouldn't really be part of the equation. Like if I go in with the intention to be clear about my message and to deliver it in a compassionate way, well then why do I need all that fluff?
Yeah.
If I go in with a fear of offending you or whatever, then I risk not getting the message across clearly. And when I do that, I risk that it's going to cause us more disharmony in the relationship anyway.
Yeah, I thought like the biggest thing for me from that conversation was about self-awareness and expectations, as you mentioned. Like the amount of time, like he mentioned the story about him and his mate. His mate told him that he's not being a good friend or something along those lines. Where he didn't realise that he wasn't, because his mate had a different expectation of the relationship than what he did. So it really hit home in terms of like, it got me thinking straight away in terms of my relationships with everyone, whether it's be family, friends, co-workers or anything like that. Like how can we be better at setting expectations of this is what I like to do, or this is the way I like to do things, this is the way that you like to do things. Where's this middle ground that we can meet? Because it might be, I don't know, using an example of like a romantic relationship. Like one of you might like to, I don't know, contact all day, every day, and like send lots of messages, lots of phone calls, just keep up to date. Whereas the other one might not like that. They might just like to chat in person and say, I don't want to message, or I'll just see you when I get home or whatever. And so it's about understanding that other person's expectation and understanding that, okay, yes, I do things this way, they do things this way. Where's this middle ground that we can meet in, and where's an expectation that we can set together so that then we can sort of both get out of it what we want to get out of it. Because if we're both like pulling in our direction, then ultimately the relationship is the thing that suffers. And we speak about that all the time. Is that there's like, I guess our relationship, but then there's the relationship. Like in terms of there's me in any relationship. There's three parties. There's me, you, and our relationship.
Yeah.
And if I'm getting what I want, if I'm not getting what I want, and you're not getting what you want, or the relationship isn't getting what they want, then we're all getting pulled in these different directions. So ultimately, we need to come up with something that's going to be good for the relationship. Because if the relationship is the one that's breaking down, then everything will break down. So we can't.
The relationship feeds us.
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing is to go: is the relationship worthwhile? Or can it be worthwhile? Is this something I want to persist with and grow? And usually the answer is yes, thankfully. Yeah. And if that's the case, then it's gone, well, to do that, like we always, often you talk about how the combination of two things is greater than the sum of its parts. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of the same premise. So we're going, well, by working together as a team and within this relationship, we achieve more. Like we move closer towards the things we want. We get the benefits of those interactions, of growing together, interacting together.
Yeah.
And so then it's about, well, if that's what we want, there might be personal needs that we have as well. It's like, I might like that, you made me coffee every time I come into the office or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a need I have. And if you don't make me coffee, then I get a little bit like salty and upset, and because well, Ben made himself coffee. Why didn't he think of me or something, right? And it's like, but that's a pretty personal need, and it's what it's doing is it's asking something of you, which I may or may not have been clear about. And it doesn't necessarily feed the relationship.
Yeah.
However, if we look at it from a different point of view and we think about what does a relationship need? Well, it needs presence, it needs communication, like things to be clear, it needs care for each other. And, if all of that exists, then it's not about me expecting you to make me a coffee every time I come to the office. It's more about that if you're making a coffee, you might offer me one and make one at the same time, right? So it doesn't become a chore. It doesn't become a tit for tat that I did this for you and you have to do that for me now.
Yeah.
It becomes by investing in this, we both benefit from it. Yeah. And that'll look differently in that we might compromise on things or we might just reframe how we go about things.
Yeah, and I think like the thing that he spoke about was actually setting those expectations and actually having a conversation, not just thinking, this is what they expect as well. Just because you're doing something doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you either want to be doing or think you should do. Like you might just be doing something because that's what you think I want. And at the end of the day, it could be like, I'm doing this because I think this is what you want. You doing this because you think that's what I want. And then neither of us actually want that. And then we're both just, we're both just sucking the energy out of ourselves because we think that's what the other person wants. And then it's like, well, actually, we sit down and have a conversation. It's like, actually, I don't want that, and you don't want that. So why the hell are we doing it this way? Like, it's like, how can we do it as early as possible? When he spoke about, like, especially if you're just starting a relationship, like, how can you set the intentions and expectations from basically day one to understand how each other likes things done, so that then you can be more mindful about when you're interacting with each other or when you're doing certain things. How can you make sure that both parties are getting what they need out of it, and it's not pulling each other apart. It's actually helping bond you together more. Yeah,
because I think this is one of the biggest things that people can take away and use straight away is that where in your life are you making assumptions about someone, what someone wants or needs from you, rather than just asking them. Yeah. Rather than just being really clear, and vice versa. Like, where do you feel like you're not getting your needs met or you're not being understood, where you could explain things better to someone. Yeah. So, this is like I've taken this back to my relationship as well, like with my wife, and it was brilliant. Like straight away, we were able to identify some things where we could acknowledge areas where we could be more impactful with the energy we put into the relationship, because it was things that we then understood better about. Well, this is a high impact thing you do for me. Like, I really love it when you greet me at the door. Like,
And it might be small things that you like greeting at the door. Like, that's a pretty small thing, but at the same time, to you, it could be a big thing.
Yeah, small, like minimum viable product, or like minimum effective dose. When we talk about effect in the gym, it's really what it is.
And it might not, and it might be like some things can be very obvious, but then other things can be like not obvious at all. It's like you might like that, but Kim, your wife might never have thought it. She'd be like, oh, well, why does he care if I do that or not? Like,
but also showing gratitude and being present at that moment. So if your partner or whoever it is, let's use that example. So greeting you at the door. So if Kim comes and greets me at the door and I come home, but I'm still on the phone call, or I'm like, I've just got to pull these things down first, and I get distracted by the kids. Well, why would if she hasn't then got that feedback from me that says, I'm really grateful for this, this is the moment, I like that you do this for me, it makes me feel special, important, or whatever, valued, then why would she continue doing that as well? So, like, it's not just the verbal feedback we give people, but it's that non-verbal, like body language, and the rest of it adds up to that as well. So I just think it's it's interesting because, like you said, small effort for high impact, whereas it could be something else, like someone, I don't know, like maybe it's like a task-based thing, right? That sort of being of service to someone. It's like, oh, they always pack your bag or something for when you go away, or something else, right? So a bit more effort involved in that. Yeah. But if someone doesn't appreciate that, if someone actually likes packing their own bag or whatever it is, you've now put in a high amount of effort but got a low result. Yeah. So there's a bit of frustration, bitterness, resentment maybe. Yeah. that other person doesn't even recognize that because that's actually not what they want. And maybe they have some ill feelings because they're like, well, actually you took that away from me. I wanted to do that myself. And like, can you see how easily this disharmony can come about in a relationship through good intentions, but just like the terms of engagement weren't clear. Yeah.
And again, it comes back to communication and how well can you communicate with each other about how you're feeling, what you do like, what you don't like. And so often we hide things from people in terms of relationships, both romantic and non-romantic, because we think, oh, like if I do this or if I say this, then they might not like it or whatever, or you're really making things harder for yourself by not verbalizing how you're feeling. And I don't mean go out there and go, oh, you make me feel like this when you do this and this and just dump everything on someone, because that can do the complete opposite. So but it's about just making intentions like, oh, thanks, man, I really appreciate when you do this, or or even asking someone like, how do you feel when I do this? Is it actually something that you enjoy, or is it actually something that you like, you don't really care for, or doing the opposite and actually making you resent me more, even though I'm trying to help you, like you spoke about in that situation. So like, and that's one thing I'd challenge everyone listening to do is to go out there and whether it's your partner in terms of a romantic partner or family member or even a friend, and just actually go to someone and talk to them about expectations within the relationship and ask them and sit down or have a phone call or whatever it is and say, hey, like, what are you wanting to get more out of from this, or what am I giving to you that's servicing you really well, or where can we fix things up, or where can we add something, or whatever it might be, but just be more clear about expectations around the relationship and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and I really like the premise of inviting someone to do that. Like, often the closer the relationship is, the more again we assume, the more we kind of expect. But rather than doing that, like, yes, there is the relationship as that third entity, but also respect the individual. So it's like, don't take for granted that there's some sort of possession or ownership there because you have a relationship together. Invite someone. Would you like to come and do this with me today? Not, oh, I just thought you'd be there. Like, now that you're not going to be there, now I'm annoyed because you didn't let me know that. It's like, well, no, like, if I want to go to the beach on the weekend, I'll invite my partner to go to the beach on the weekend with me.
Don't tell them, we're going to the beach on the weekend.
Yeah, or, it might be that, you want to talk about this stuff. So it's not like, oh, we really need to talk about this stuff for our relationship. It's like, look, would you be interested in like just talking a bit more about expectations in a relationship? Like, had this conversation or listened to this podcast and picked up a couple of things I thought could be useful. How about we just, and do it, like, create a setting where people can feel disarmed and comfortable. Like, so do it at dinner, like go out somewhere or go for a picnic or whatever it is. But like, don't do it at home around family and kids and like in an environment where there's other things going on. Do it in a place that feels safe. And I think that goes a long way. I picked up some of that stuff from the Barefoot Investor when I was reading that book, and it talks about, like, a lot of times people don't want to talk about finances. It's a stress for them. It's maybe in some families it was never talked about. It was almost like a taboo subject. And I thought it was just a really cool idea that they said to break all of that down, go and do a date night. But as part of the date night, and not every date night has to be that, right? But just have like a regular event where you almost treat yourselves in a safe environment. So it's really disarming, everything's sort of calmer and whatever. And just spend a small part of that dedicated to your plan or reviewing your plan. Simple. Like, I just think, setting a conversation up for success is important as well, not just the content of that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, and the other thing that I took out of the conversation with Cliff was about self-awareness and how we spoke about, like, how to become more self-aware, and it's hard to become more self-aware if you don't know you're not self-aware because you're not self-aware, which is kind of a bit of a crazy circle, but he just spoke about being more open to being self-aware and more open to things such as feedback and stuff like that. Whether you think you are self-aware or whether you think you're not self-aware or whatever it might be, and whether you're right or wrong, like you might think you're self-aware, but other people be like, dude, you are not self-aware at all. But being open to that stuff and being open to growing and learning and experiencing different things as much as you can, because if you're not open to it, you're never going to be self-aware if you're not open to it. So it starts by just being more open to it and really understanding, I guess, what it takes to be more self-aware. And like he mentions a few things in the podcast, but it's I found that to be, again, another point that I can take in my life, and it's not necessarily only in being self-aware. Like it's in other parts of things. It's like being open to whether it's feedback, like whether it's at work or at home, or again, like in terms of the expectation stuff, like being open to feedback from expectations that you might hear something that necessarily isn't like comfortable for you to hear or something like that, but it's going to help you grow and learn from that. Because if we're so closed off to things, again, they can build up in the background, or you just sweep things under the rug. Like it eventually will come back and catch up with you.
Yeah.
But if you're being open to understanding more about who you are, more about who the people around you are, then the better. Like I personally feel like and it's amazing. I've had different relationships, not necessarily romantic relationships in the past, where like some things have, again, like just you don't talk about this, you don't talk about that, blah blah, and there's others where things you talk about absolutely everything. And the ones you get the most out of are the ones where you're open and everything's out on the table, and because you feel safer to speak to someone about things. You feel more open, like you understand that person better. Like
there's no perceived threat because everything's just out on the table.
Yeah.
Like it's not about, like you were saying before, it's not like kind of bleeding everything and dumping everything all in one go. It's just about being emotionally open and available.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Definitely. So, anything else you took away from either of the podcasts, I guess?
I mean, not really. I just think the best thing to do is to go and listen to them yourself, or watch them if you're inclined to watch at the same time. Where this is more about kind of what we took from it, and maybe something you can relate to, whether you've already listened to them or you think maybe it's worth going back and listening to them now. But the goal is not to be a short version of them. It's just to sort of talk about how it can be relatable to you.
Yeah, and it's also to demonstrate that like how important reflecting is, whether it's on podcasts or learning resources that you had, or whether it's in any aspect of your life. Like we speak about like your 4 major areas of your life, but how can you reflect on all those things, whether it be your mindset, whether it be your health and well-being, your career and finance stuff, or your family and relationship stuff? How can you like constantly reflect on all those different areas of your life to make sure that things are going the way you want them to? You're keeping that balance across everything, and that's also about looking at your life as a whole. Because if you individually silo those things, they might be working. Oh yeah, this is working well. This is working well. But then if they're not working well together, then that's the critical part. Is if there isn't the balance across all of them, then that's where things can start to tear other things down across the way. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Awesome. Great reflection.
Yep.
I've got more out of it again, and even just hearing how you've learnt and grown from the stuff that presenting those podcasts as well, and then sharing some of my own stuff. So thank you. So guys, if you have a great story about resilience or adaptability, or you just want to get in touch, just head to our website. It's theadaptabilitymovement.com.au. There's a contact form there as well. So if you've got an interest in joining us on a podcast, or you think you want to suggest someone you think would be a great guest, then by all means go and do that. And you can find all of our social media contacts and the rest of it there as well.
Yeah, and like I guess we're really trying to spread the word of adaptability more. So if you're working a business, if you're in a school or something like that, and you want to get us along, like we do. A range of different programs which you can find on the website. So head there, you'll learn more, and get in touch, sing out. Even if you just want to have a chat about anything, like let's contact. And we're just trying to create a community of people who understand what it is to be more adaptable and how that can positively impact their life. So
for sure.